Good afternoon, everybody. So nice to see so many students and colleagues and friends here with us today. Thank you for being here to attend this extraordinary event today with acclaimed author Dacia Maraini. Signora Maraini, benvenuta a Bryn Mawr College. Grazie. An event affiliated with the Flexner 2023 Flexner Lectureship and organized by the Transnational Italian Studies in co-sponsorship with the Consular General of Italy in Philadelphia, the President's Office, the programs of Gender and Sexuality, Praxis, and Comparative Literature. And thank you also, Patrizia, Director of Education Office, to be with us today. So many thanks to all our sponsors and siamo molto onorati di essere qui oggi. So before starting with the event, our provost, Tim Hart, has generously accepted our invitation for the institutional greetings for today's event. So Tim, the floor is yours, and I will be back in a few minutes.
Thank you, Roberta. So in Praise of Disobedience, Clare of Assisi and Other Revolutionary Women, which will be a conversation between Dacia Maraini and Bryn Mawr Assistant Professor of Italian, Luca Zipoli, a conversation organized, as Roberta said, in conjunction with this semester's Flexner lectures at the college. Dacia Maraini, I welcome you to Bryn Mawr. She is an internationally acclaimed novelist, essayist, playwright, poet, and translator, and she is an extremely prominent figure in modern and contemporary Italian culture. Her work focuses mostly on women's issues, and she has won a number of prestigious Italian literary awards in Italy. In conjunction with her writing, Maraini is a full-fledged social activist, and she has long fought for the rights of women, children, and incarcerated people. She has taught and lectured at Harvard, Columbia, and Stanford, among other institutions. And I'd also add that back in the day, Maraini was personal friends with none other than Maria Callas, one of the great opera singers of the 20th century, and Pier Paolo Pasolini, one of the great poets and filmmakers of the last century, and one of my personal favorites. So it is a great honor and privilege to have Dacia Maraini at Bryn Mawr today. She is an embodiment of great Italian culture, and we are privileged to have her. Luca Zipoli is an assistant professor in the Department of Transnational Italian Studies at Bryn Mawr College. He holds a PhD in Italian literature from the prestigious, my Italian accent's not going to be good here, Scuola Normale Superiore in Pisa, where he also received his undergraduate degree. Before joining Bryn Mawr College, he researched and taught at Princeton University and NYU. Zipoli's main research interests include early modern and modern Italian literature, with a specific focus on how the transnational Italian avant-garde revived and adapted Italy's literary tradition throughout the 20th century. We are thrilled to have Luca Zipoli teaching at Bryn Mawr. Since joining the faculty here a year and a half ago, he has quickly become a beloved, cherished member of our community. And lastly, before I rush off, alas, to something else I need to go to, I would like to thank both Luca Zipoli and Roberta Ricci, Chair of Transnational Italian Studies at Bryn Mawr, for organizing this exciting and what I would very much assume will be an enriching event. So thank you all.
So thank you very much, Tim, for this generous introduction. And again, benvenuta Dacia Maraini at Bryn Mawr College. And I really cannot believe that you're finally here after so many months of talking about it and getting ready for this event. Author, novelist, poet, playwright, feminist, activist, film director. She has written numerous plays, novels, short stories, articles, and received major literary awards, such as the Premio Fregene for Isolina, 1985, the Premio Cappello, and the Book of the Year Award per la lunga vita di Marianna Ocria in 1990, the Premio Strega for Buio, 1999, and many others awards. Dacia Maraini continues to be a prolific writer with La seduzione dell'altro in 2010, Il treno dell'ultima notte, 28, and her most recent novel, Sguardo Oriente, was published in 2022. We are reading now in class Vita Mia, that just got published, and we are excited to talk about his memoir, in which Dacia Maraini remembers her life with her family at the concentration camp in Japan during World War II. And I am stopping here to list works and books that Dacia Maraini wrote, because I could go on for hours and hours, but you're not here to listen to me. Instead, I would like to bring your attention now on her militanza, beyond the quantity of things that Dacia Maraini has accomplished in her life. And for such a militanza, we thank you very much. Una militanza gentile, as has been defined. The notion of militanza brings Dacia Maraini among the feminists of the 70s, within the theater companies of the 70s in Rome, especially working at the outskirts of the city, such as Rome, directing festival in Abruzzo, with a strong practical sense of what literature is within the reality, with the notion of words affiliated with historical events and not conceived as a bolla di retorica. Una maestra della letteratura on the road. She says, I was born traveling, sono nata viaggiando, always committed to the most urgent issues, from feminism to human rights, becoming highly sensitive and original interpreter of the changes in our society, demonstrating with even greater evidence a profound civil vocation that we really like here at Bryn Mawr College. Always dealing with otherness and diversity in an anthropological spirit. And I want to mention that we have been teaching Dacia Maraini's books for many years, and in courses dedicated to 20th and 21st century literature, to gender issues. We read Marianna Ocria, we saw the film, we read Una Vita, we read Buio, we are reading Vita Mia, we read Chiara d'Assisi. And in these books, Dacia Maraini explores the theme of child violence, prostitution, domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking. And she says, and now I'm quoting you, la conseguenza più crudele dello stupro, oramai la sappiamo, è che la vittima introietta il disprezzo dell'aguzzino e si giudica sporca, mostruosa. Secondo questo perverso meccanismo mentale, la colpa è sempre di chi si fa stuprare. In the translation, the cruelest consequence of rape is that the victim internalizes the abuser's contact and judges himself or herself to be dirty, monstrous. According to this perverse mental mechanism, it is always the fault of the person who gets raped. How pertinent. Dacia Maraini, and that's when I really I see many students, I really started to use your books in class when we started talking about feminicide. The feminicide is an emergency in Italy, with over 150 cases each year, with the total of over 600 in the last 4 years. In 2023, we have even seen an increase in the number of women killed at the end of their partner or ex-partner, with a percentage of an increase of 4%. So far, there are 80 women in 2023. So it is an emergency. Dacia knows very well about this emergency. And she says, l'odio contro le donne non l'hanno inventato loro, l'hanno respirato a scuola, nei libri, in chiesa, nei campi sportivi. E se la loro malattia prende la forma dell'aggressione contro le donne, è una malattia che fa la spia alle dee di un'epoca. In translation, they did not invent hatred against women, but they breathed it at school, in books, in church, in sports fields. And their illness takes the form of aggression against women. It is a disease that reflects the ideas of an era. So on this note, let's start talking about women, and Clare of Assisi in particular, and other revolutionary women. But before doing that, I was about to present Luca Zipoli, but since the team already gave a formal introduction of Luca Zipoli, I would like to just add a personal note. Luca arrived as a tenure track here at Bryn Mawr College in September. He was a visiting assistant professor last September. And I don't know how we did our life without you, Luca, because since you arrived, you have given us so much opportunities to grow and to talk and to reflect about things, soon also maybe with some arguments, because we need that too. So thank you, Luca, for having worked so much for this event. And we are ready now to start. Talking or to travel, like Dacia Maraini likes to say. And I have prepared also a poem that Dacia Maraini wrote, but we can leave that for later. So without any further ado, thank you both very much, Dacia Maraini and Luca Zipoli.
Thank you very much, Roberta and Provost Harty, for those generous remarks. And of course, thank you, Dacia, for joining Bryn Mawr. And thank you all students, professors, faculty, friends, for being here with us tonight. So the occasion for being here is, there are many occasions, there are many good reasons for being here. But one of them is that a book by Dacia Maraini has just come out in an English translation. And I'm speaking about the book on Clare of Assisi, this very famous saint of medieval Italy. So I will give you just a very brief introduction to this book, and then I will ask some questions to Dacia to delve into this book. And of course, there will be the opportunity to also tackle the many other points of interest of Dacia Maraini's career. So, Chiara d'Assisi, Elogio della Disobbedienza, Clare of Assisi in Praise of Disobedience, came out in 2013, but like I said, 10 years later, so this year came out in an English translation. It is dedicated to the figure of Clare of Assisi, this medieval saint, but it's a novel. It's not a hagiographical work. The book starts with a letter, with a mysterious letter that a mysterious person, Chiara Mandala, a fictional character, writes to an author whom we understand is Dacia Maraini herself. So there is this opening letter in which the character says, my name is Chiara, I come from Sicily, I'm a 19 years old, young woman, I'm also an opera singer, and I would like you to tell me about Clare of Assisi, who has the same name as myself, because I was born on the day of Chiara d'Assisi. So the author, Dacia Maraini, replies, I don't know exactly who Clare of Assisi is, why you're asking me to focus on Clare of Assisi. And little by little, so the author is also quite annoyed about this unusual request, but a correspondence starts, and the author, so Dacia Maraini herself, becomes captivated by the figure of this interesting saint. Then the correspondence suddenly stops because these mysterious figures disappears completely. And so the book turns, so it's an exchange of letter in the first part, and then in the middle part, it's a diary that the author is writing now that the interlocutor is absent. Then the interlocutor comes again at the end with a surprise at the end that, of course, I will not reveal. So I'll leave that surprise for your own reading, but there is, a sudden appearance of the mysterious figure. So I think my first question is, why, this topic? I mean, as a lay woman, as a non-religious activist, as Professor Ricci also mentioned, who is not a practicing Catholic. So why religious women? And this is not the first time the religious women appears in your production. Why do religious women and saints interest you?
Does it work? Can you listen to me? I'm very low voice. I'm sorry. I was interested in literature. I came to Chiara d'Assisi because I was interested in literature of women. I was asking myself, but did the women write? Where did it go? All the writings of women. So I started to analyze the life in the medieval period, and I found that the life of women was awful. I mean, they were prisoners at home. They were married at somebody they didn't know at 13, more or less, years old, and they had to make a child every year. And many of them died of when they gave birth to a child. The absurd thing is that the only women who could study, who could read, who had the time to read and to write, were the women going in the convent. That was an absurd situation, no? In the way they were limited in their freedom, but in the same time they had the possibility to learn. And so you can find writings by women in the convents. But also the strange thing, maybe it comes from the misogyny of the church. These writings, they have never have been taken seriously. I found that there are lots of writings by women in the convent, still there. Luckily, they don't have been destroyed, but they're there. And so I started to analyze these writings, and some of them are beautiful. And I'm asking myself why they're not in the literary, tradition or anyway in the critics or book of anthologies for the school. Never, nothing. Only sometime Caterina da Siena, Saint Catherine, because she was a politician. She, she observed, she helped the Pope coming back from Avignon, for example. That was a very important thing. But she's not a real writer. I read the book. I read all her letters. They are, I mean, intelligent, but they're not really poetical letters. Instead, Chiara, who didn't write much, but she was a wonderful writer. She was also poetical. She had a sort of style, a biblical style, but very high level and also very knowledgeable. They are not only a chronicle or only a phenomenon. They are written very well. There are some letters that are also amusing. For example, not by Chiara, but later. For example, there is a mystic, a woman, who is in a convent, and she writes letters, beautiful letters. But these letters are to God, a Dio. But you know what he says? Well, if I am married to your son, so you are my godfather. You are il mio suocero. Si dice godfather, no? No, come si dice? Father-in-law, I'm sorry. Father-in-law. So you are my father-in-law. You know that men who were going in the convent, they were brother or anyway son of God, but not married, never married. The women, when they were going in the convent, they were married with Christ. So she's speaking with God and says, well, you know, I don't like very much to have all these women married to Christ. It's very strange because in the tradition, Christ was not married at all. But now he has a lot of wives, and what is a polygamous she was a little bit, no, but she said, well, but I love you and I accept this situation. But she was not so happy speaking about with God. And, but they're beautiful letters. Also, I mean, with a style, not only naive, but also well, acknowledged people. And many others, also many are letters or situation of letters of love to Christ. But some of these letters are beautiful. Naturally, you can't expect that they were writing about social problems, but usually they are letters of freedom of thought, freedom of intelligence, and sometimes they were also speaking about their own situation, which was not simple at all. It was very hard. For example, Chiara was the daughter of a family, of a very rich and powerful family. And but she leaves everything. She leaves her wonderful dresses, wonderful jewels. She goes to found a convent, and she sleeps on the per terra, on the soil, and with a stone on her. Under her head as a cushion, and she says, this is the disobedience of her, because the Roman Church used to send to all the convents, even the convents of all women, somebody who had to control the situation through the money. So they will control the money. Si chiamavano economy. The economist. I don't know if that exists the word in English, economist. No. L'economo was somebody who was controlling the money situation of the churches. So they were sent, but it was a control. Really, it was a ideological control. So, and she sent away always the economist sent from the church, saying, we don't need, because we don't have money. And it was true. They didn't they didn't have money because they didn't buy anything. In her convent, if the peasant will come to bring some bread, something to eat, some fruit, they will eat. If they didn't, they wouldn't eat. So they were really poor. They didn't have any propriety. She says, but this is what Christ did. No? He didn't have any propriety. He was living on the road. He didn't have anything, any propriety, no house, no place to stay, no money. And she wanted to, this was the mystic side. The mystic side. And in the convent in which she founded, there was no propriety at all, never, no propriety. And this was the church didn't like very much, because the church was very rich and had propriety, you see. So she was very strategically intelligent, because you could be denounced as a heretic for these ideas. But she said, I respect the church and the laws of the church, but in my convent, I do what I want. She was really independent, incredibly independent, you see. And they couldn't say anything, because it was true that there was not one penny, nothing, you see. And also she was, she had the real strong spiritual attitude, which was not so normal, because you have to think that in the feudal society, you know what happened, that the son, the first son had to everything, had everything. And the other children, and there were many, because they were doing a lot of children, the other children, maybe one or two, the more beautiful, they were married. The other, they were going to the convent, no? And the men, the young boys, they were going to military. So the majority of the convents, they're not made of women who really believed or wanted to go in the convent. They were there because they didn't have another place to go. If they were not married, they had to go to the convent. So it was a place in which the women didn't want. I mean, they were not mystic at all. They didn't choose to go there. So usually they had a salotto, they had people to come there, they had wonderful meals, they were cooking, they were especially good in cooking, and they were preparing special food, they were, and they were also reading, writing, they had high level, but in the same time, they were not there for spiritual reasons. No? Instead, some of them, and this was Chiara, was there because she believed in something which was also against the tradition of the church. That means poverty, spirituality, the sort of democracy, being all together, all the same. They were the same. She was the come si dice, la governatrice, but at the same time she was absolutely doing everything, even the more humble works in the convent.
So a very democratic,
yes.
yeah. And Chiara d'Assisi was a hugely popular figure in Middle Ages. She became saint 3 years, I think, after her death, and usually it's a much longer process. So she was at the same time disobedient, but also accepted within the church.
Well, when they made her saint, it was a way of putting her outside, because when she died, they cancelled her her wills, her rules. They have completely changed them. Yeah. But so they made her saint, but in the same time they changed her wills, and that was a reason. But she was disobedient because she wanted to go around, which was before in the beginning of the church, the women could go around to preach, no? Si dice così. And she wanted to go around and preach. She was also very good in speaking. But the Pope, just in her time, decided that all the convent, female convent, had to be, come si dice, the reclusive. Enclosed, yes. So she couldn't move. She couldn't move. But luckily she was so famous, so she had such a capacity of communication that all the people went to her. So the convent was also full of people. There was a line outside the door of people asking her suggestions, questions, because they believed that she was a very strong, spiritually strong woman, you see. So she was very, very popular. And they couldn't do anything because the people were coming to her because she couldn't go around. This was another kind of disobedience. No. Well, the disobedience, what I learned by Chiara is naturally not to do what you want, but to be faithful to your ideals. I think this was the greatness of Chiara. No, she was really idealistic. She believed in things. She lived on the line of her ideas.
Yeah. Which was also very challenging because the choice for poverty was really revolutionary. I mean, poverty means not having heating, not having air conditioning in the summer, not having food, not having running water. So she lived in very difficult conditions. So she entered the convent when she was 18, and she was then she felt sick, and she was disabled for most of her years. For, I think, 39 years, she was sick in bed because of the choice for poverty. And but nevertheless, she was so famous. I mean, being disabled and not being able to actually being the one exerting the agency in the world. So I think my question is, why do you think this choice for poverty is so revolutionary, and why was it so important for you nowadays to rediscover this ideal, this very difficult and challenging ideal of poverty nowadays?
Well, for her, it was a protest against the power of the church, and the church had become very corrupted, no? And the money was so important. And that this was a sort of a protest against the church, which was not an ideological protest, but it was a very strong, active protest. And so, as I said, she was living without shoes, and really nothing. For example, one amusing thing that they, for example, the other nuns, they were asking for hands to have come si chiamano le uova? The eggs, yes. And she said, no, I don't want any power, any propriety, no. But at a certain moment, the convent was full of mice. And so they said, why don't we take a cat? Because, the mice were going everywhere, and they were very noisy, dirty also. And so she said, she thought a lot about having a cat, but at the end, they took a cat in the convent, and the cat was very happy because they were full of mice around. So the cat did her work, but one of the come si dice, uno delle cose che importanti, dei miracles that she did is that once she couldn't walk because she had paralyzed legs. She was sewing, she asked for a piece of I don't know, this stuff, and nobody could hear her because they were praying in the church. So she asked the cat to go and take this piece of come si dice? Cloth. That's right, the cloth, and the cat went and came back with the cloth, and this was one of the miracles. But she did also a lot of miracles in the sense that they were coming to her with ill children, and she could put their hands, and they were healed. I mean, this could be, the power of the emotions, the power of your hands, the power of being a precious person, the power of being saint. There is a power. It can be suggested, it can do something. And she was so famous that when she died, the line of the people coming to see her, it was all the town, even out of the town, they were coming from everywhere. So really she was very appreciated as a woman, but not because she had power, but because she was prestigious. She was known as a saint because she behaved as a saint. This was the problem. But truly, not only theoretically, but truly in the life, every day she couldn't live without, she was not eating, not, as I said, never, no propriety, no milk, no eggs, you had, in the convents, there were a lot of animals that they used to eat animals. But she didn't want, because also she was also very tender to the animals.
And yeah, and also, it was so a challenging situation, but in a way they were deciding for themselves. So there was not like an external male authority like that of a husband or a father deciding for them, and they were deciding for their own. Even in this difficult situation, even with such a hunger, because they were not eating very much, but at the same time they had the control of their body. And I think I have a question about the structure of the book, because as I told you, it's quite experimental, because it's at the same time an epistolary novel, because there is this exchange of a letter between a fictional character and the author, then the diary, but also there are many historical sources that you cite in the book. There are even passages in ancient medieval Italians that you report. So I think it's a dialogue between different voices. So the voice of your voice, the voice of fictional Chiara, the ancient voice of Chiara d'Assisi, and then historians and scholars like Chiara Frugoni. So there are many Chiara, in this book, and I think my question is, why is it so important for you to establish this dialogue between many voices within your writing?
I was trying to understand, because to understand what is the history of women, you have to deal with history. You have to go inside and try to understand what happened. What from what moment start this misogyny? Well, I must say that from the polytheism, you go to the monotheism, there is a sort of fear of sex. It's is incredible, but all the monotheism, they are based on sexophobic. They are very, very sexophobic. If you think also our religion, there is for example, the mother of Christ is a virgin, so no sex, never, and sex is viewed as something diabolical, dangerous, terrible, and the accusation to the witch, for example, it was sex. They had sex with the devil, and this is incredible because in the polytheism, sex was very important because sex is the beginning of the reproduction of a human being. So sexuality is considered sacred. It's important. But when you go to monotheism, then it changes completely. That's very strange. And also, I studied a lot to write this book. I read all the majority of the books written by the father of the church, I padri della Chiesa, Very, very interesting. And I found such a misogyny that I was surprised because really, for example, Sant'Agostino, come si chiama? Agostino. Well, he was very courageous. He was very modern. He wrote about himself. He made he had a mother, Santa Monica, who was a very modern, very intelligent, but in a certain moment he writes about women. He says that the women really don't give birth because the come si dice il semen of man is really the life stays in the seed of man. Women just put their womb to conserve this semen, but the life comes for men, not for women. It's incredible. Many of the father of the church say the same thing. They say, starting also with St. Paul. St. Paul also is very severe against women. He says women have to obey to the men as the men have to obey to the church. And they have to cover their head, for example, which was Christ didn't. Christ was a great, great revolution, and he was absolutely for women. I mean, for example, when there is a resurrection. It doesn't matter if it is true or not true. It doesn't matter. It's symbolically. When there is a resurrection of Christ, discipline, come si chiama? Discepoli. Apostoli. Okay, okay. You understand me. They were not there. So there were 3 women. And he tells to these women, go and say to my discipline that I am alive again. No? Well, this seems to us very simple because they were there, but it's not true. Because the possibility of the witness, the women couldn't be witness. Non potevano essere testimoni. They couldn't be. There was a law that the women could never be witness. They couldn't say the word of a witness. So he tells them, and that gives for the first time the power to be witness to women. So this was a revolution. I think that at the end, why they did crucify him, because he was very, very modern in a way. But because originally all the ancient religions, they are based on women, very important women at the beginning. No? For example, in Japan, the Shinto is made on a woman god. Amaterasu was a woman god. And then, for example, all the ancient, really traditional ancient religions, they were usually women. A woman god, and then, well, the anthropologist, for example, Malinowski, is very interesting. It could be an idea, but it is interesting. He says that at the beginning, when the human beings, they didn't cultivate the ground. They were going around, erano nomadi, no? Nomads, and taking from the trees. And they were naturally shooting. See. They were all. They were not so misogynist. The women and men were equal, had the same rights. Then he says, when they started to work with the soil, when they become to be agricultural, from that moment start the idea of property. That's a very intelligent idea, I think. The property means that somebody has to be the owner of the property. And from that moment comes the rule, the beginning of the rule is more important for a man, because the man was more free, because the women had children, etc. And they decide to have the owner of the land. And from there comes patriarchy. I mean, this is the idea of anthropologists. I like it. I think it could be condiviso. Well, these women, some of these women, but that goes on for centuries, some of the women understand that in the convent they could be free, more free, because they were not under the domination of a man. And, for example, if somebody knows about a woman in Brazil, no, in Mexico, when in the 17th century, for example, she was a poet. She was a wonderful, come si chiama?
Inés de la Cruz.
Inés de la Cruz. Juana Inés de la Cruz. Juana Inés de la Cruz. In the 17th century, and she was a poet. She was a wonderful person. She was beautiful, and they wanted to marry her. And she said, no, because I want to study. I want to learn. I want to write. And so she decided herself to go to a convent. And she was so intelligent that she was a phenomenon as a cultivated woman. So all the knowledge philosopher or writer came to her to speak with her because she was so intelligent. But at a certain moment, she wrote something about the church. And that the church didn't like, and they decided to burn all her books. And they decided that she had to go out of the convent, and that she had to heal the people ill of, come si dice, peste? Plague. Yes. And she died, naturally. That happened. Well, this is a story of a woman, who chooses to go to a convent because she wanted to write, to read, to be inside the knowledge. No, she wrote beautiful poems. They are still there. She's famous in also all American, Latin America, and you understand that when they are against the power of the church, which is very misogynist. I've been also. This Pope is a little different. This Pope Francesco is a very, very open mind.
He's called Francesco, so Francesco, getting back to St. Francis.
No Pope, never. And a Pope took the name of Francesco. So he's very much...
to disobedience.
Disobedience, and like to prefer Francesco, Francesco St. Francis, who was a very disobedient man in a way. For example, St. Francis when there was the crusade, he was against the crusade. He said, why you go there and kill people because they don't have another religion? No, he was incredibly modern. But the church was against. They liked to go and crusade and kill a lot of people. And once, for example, he went to Damietta, which was in Egypt, and spoke with the Sultano, and said, why we had to make war? Just let's make friends and with respect with their own religion. And the Sultan has agreed to this. But the church was organizing a crusade, 5,000 people, and they throw him away and say, no, you don't understand what we have to do, the war. There was the fetishism of the war. And so they went, and this was being the more painful and horrible crusade because they died all from the crusade and from the people there, which were absolutely innocent. I mean, they didn't know why there was this war of religious war. Well, he was against. He was very much against any kind of war. This didn't, no, it was not, the church didn't agree for this sake. But I think that if the church is alive today, is also because St. Francis was there. Yeah. Because the power of the church is also, there is a church of the army, of the war, of the power, of the propriety, but there is also a church, spiritual church, which is very important.
And while you were speaking about the importance of women in the gospel for Christ's message, I was thinking of the episode of La Samaritana al Pozzo, so the woman from Samaria at the well, who is the very first person in the gospel to whom Jesus reveals that he is the Messiah. So once again, whether we believe that or not, but from a literary point of view, I mean, it's very important that the first person to be revealed that Jesus is the Messiah is a woman, and a woman from this very dangerous, poor, and abandoned region like Samaria. So in a way, all those religious women, I think they were getting back to the original message of the gospel to challenge the misogynistic and xenophobic ideas of the fathers of the church. I have one last question, then I would like to open the floor for other questions, because I was really struck that there are many books within this book, because it's a novel, so it's a very enjoyable, very readable novel, and also the translation by Jane Tylus is a wonderful one. And I'm saying this because it's not me who says that, but June Palairi praised this book, saying that Jane Tylus' translation is resonant and immensely readable. So, and I really agree with that. I have to agree with June Palairi. So it's very readable. It's a novel. It's ironical at some point. It's also a historical book. I mean, on the life in the context, the life of St. Clare. But it's also a book about you. There is a lot of your personal experiences and biography within the history of St. Clare. So, and I was struck by a passage in which you compare the experience of St. Clare in her poverty in the convent, such a difficult time, with your own experience in the concentration camp back in 1943 in Japan. And I'm saying this just because you have just published the book was written in 2013, and you were mentioning this immensely important experience of your life, and you have just come out with a book, Vita Mia, who is now available in Italian, but it will be soon be available also in English, which is a memoir, as Roberta Ricci was saying, of your experience in the concentration camp. So I think my question is, what parallel parallels did you find? Why and did you understand Chiara in her experience, despite the long distance that separates you from her and from her experiences after your experience in the concentration camp?
I knew hunger, and this was important for me to understand, but I didn't choose. Chiara chose to not to eat. But for me, it was different. For those who don't know, well, in 43, we were in Japan because my father is an anthropologist, and he was studying a population of North Japan. And we were absolutely integrated in the society. We were very, very, very well integrated. I was dressing as Japanese, I was eating Japanese, I was speaking the dialect of Kyoto. But in 43, Japan made a pact, si dice patto?
An agreement.
An agreement with the German Nazi and Italy. But Italy was divided in two pieces. Now, the south of Italy was already liberated by the Allies. In the north, instead, the north was under the Nazi fascist, and it was called La Repubblica di Salò, because Salò was the new center of this republic, which was Nazis. And that has been the more horrible period in Italy, because the Nazis were very angry that they had been thrown away from the half part of Italy. So they did horrible things. You can't imagine going in certain villages and killing all the people, even children. And they were saying that we were traitors. The Italians were traitors. So in Japan, one day, my father was teaching at the university, and we were just completely accepted by the society, Japanese society. But once they came, the police, and said, from this moment, you have to choose. So you have to sign the agreement to the Repubblica di Salò, or you will be prisoner. And so my father and my mother, they said, no, we will not sign. Not because they were politically engaged, but because they hated racism. They were all the life, by the way, anthropologists can't be racist, I think. Anyway, they were very, very strongly against Nazism. For the basis of Nazism is racism. They believed that there was a race superior to all the others. Now, this was a justification to rape, to take the others, to kill the people, etc., etc. By the way, never you hear that there is a theory of under races. No, the races are always made from the theory of races start all the way high. Those who believe to be the high races. No, never people believe that there is a low races. The high races decide that they are the top of the races, and all the others are underground and they can be abused. And so and one day from the other, they said, now you are traitors and you will be prisoners. So they took us and they brought us in a concentration camp, which was not a exterminating concentration like the Auschwitz, but it was more or less because they wanted us to die of hunger. They were not giving us enough to eat. And at a certain moment, you start to, when you don't eat, you start to be ill. We had all the illness of lack of vitamins and proteins. And so we lose our hair, the teeth were full of blood, the eyes you can't see well anymore, the muscles are going weak and weak and weak. And so my experience of hunger was so strong that for me is a very strong memory. It has signed my life, this hunger. You know, I was smelling the stones, dreaming that it was bread, for example. No, I was a child. I was 6 years old, but I was eating ants, and because when you are really hungry, you can't understand that the body is screaming, is crying and screaming, because really if you want to live, you have to eat something. We didn't have enough to eat. That was the thing. And it lasted 2 years. That's why, I tried to write this book several times, that I always stopped because it was so painful. Well, because also there was no eating and bombs, everyday bombs from the Alice. Tokyo was completely destroyed. We were near Nagoya, which got completely destroyed. And so every evening I was surprised that I was alive. So the death experience was very, very near. This was something that, it signs you like a wound. And then the guards were very sadistic. They were very sadistic. That what I think that I said it. I'm sorry that I said it yesterday, but now I think that when you give a complete power on somebody, on other people, it comes out something terrible that belongs to human being, but usually we can control it, which is sadism. It comes out everywhere. Everywhere when there is a power, a complete power. You see, for example, in asylums, in manicomi, come si chiama? Asylum, in the hospitals, where people are without power, fragile, where somebody who has a power, complete power on another person, is easy that becomes sadistic. I found it everywhere. Well, in that camp in which we were nothing, we were traitors, so they were despising us. The guards were sadistic. They used to laugh when we were humiliated. This is sadism. They were happy when we were nothing. We were crying. We were dying. We were suffering. For example, I said yesterday that they were coming letters from Italy, for us. I mean, for example, my father had the mother who was ill, and he wanted to know what happened to the mother. And they came letters from Italy. They will put the letters on the table, just to show us that there were the letters, but they didn't allow us to open this letter. And then at a certain moment they would throw them away. And that was terrible. That was terrible. What could do a letter? No, nothing. Or for example, we were sitting on the courtyard of this small prison, and because we are very weak, we couldn't lie because it was forbidden to lie down. But we were sitting on a bench, and there was a wall behind, but it was forbidden to lean on the wall. This is a foolish idea. Why? I mean, now what could do? But if you line against the wall, they will come with a stick and they will beat you. You understand? So this kind of this is really sadistic way of, and also if they want to punish, they will say, tomorrow you will have half go. They will call go. Go was a portion of rice, which was like this, 20 grams of rice. No? So they will say, tomorrow you will have half portion of rice, which was death, which was something terrible. So we were afraid of saying something. For example, one time the Red Cross came to look at it. And they gave us a lot of food to show that we were well. And they said, if you speak, if you say a word, we will take off tomorrow the go of rice, you see. So naturally we were afraid we didn't speak. But, and they were very superficial because they didn't look at us. We were very thin, we were suffering, but they didn't say, and maybe they didn't want to look at us. So they went away, and we started again with the go of rice, which was always going less and less.
Thank you very much, Dacia, for sharing this traumatic experience. I understand how painful it has been to write it, but thank you so much for sharing this and for writing this book. We have time for some questions, so I would like to open the floors to the audience.
Yes.
Ciao Dacia, benvenuta. Prima lei voglio ringraziare perché dalla prima volta che I will translate what I'm saying later. Dalla prima volta che ho letto i suoi scritti con Roberta, mi sono con i miei altri studenti, mi sono molto commossa e mi sono ossessionata da lei, che lei è così prolifica. C'è un esempio grandissimo di una scrittrice, di uno scrittore grande. Io sono rimasto, I was very struck. I said I wanted to thank Dacia because from the first time that I read her writings, I was really struck by the monumentality and greatness of her work and the very prolific nature of her opera, and reading in class with Roberta and Luca. And I was really struck by, through this wealth of characters in your opera, you give a voice to the voiceless in so many times, in so many ways, especially with women, people who are gendered like women across history. And I am struck by the courage of your ability to really go into, like you say, the depths of history where there is nothing to look at, and trying to find where are the women's writings. And really also struck by how contemporary, like the story of Clare of Assisi, is very contemporary, and in modern novels the same plot continues to be recycled in so many contexts. And I wanted to ask you, there's a very important metaphor that you talk about a lot of the muta sorda, of Chiara, who is deaf and mute, and she cannot speak literally. And I won't give away the reason why this is, but it relates to sexual violence. And there's also, in one of your other works, which to me is very dear, Dialogo di una prostituta con un suo cliente, the play you wrote, dialogue of a prostitute with one of her clients. I'm also struck by the way that there is a moment in the theater of this prostitute speaks for herself when she's not speaking to the client, this monologue, which is so rich and ironic and splendid. And I wanted to ask you how you managed to balance, come lei fa a equilibrare così la tenerezza, la fragilità e anche la resilienza e la forza di questa metafora di essere una donna, una persona senza propria voce e poi che parla. So I'll repeat the question. I wanted to ask you how you managed to balance this narrative and theme of a woman or a person so tenderly, the fragility, the tenderness, and also the resilience and strength of that condition of being someone with no voice who speaks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What's your name?
Io mi chiamo Mina.
Mina. Grazie, Mina. Thank you. Well, it's difficult to say. I think that from when I was a child, I had the sense of justice very strong. But usually, naturally, when I was a girl, a small girl, I thought that the justice belonged only to me. Then I understood that the justice, the injustice, belonged to all the women. So I understood that there were things that are equal for all women. The experience, historical experience, belonged to all women, not only for me. But my experience of justice was very, very strong. I make an example. When I was 6 years old, I was in Japan. One day, my father accused me to have destroyed a book of him, which I didn't. And I said, no, I wasn't. And he didn't believe me. And I was so angry because my sense of justice, and that I went away from home and I said, I don't want to go back home at all, never again. So, and they didn't see me going away, so they stayed there. And later they found that I was not there. They started to look at me, for me everywhere in Tokyo. They went to the hospital, they went to the police. In the evening, a telephone call came from the police, very far away from my house. And they say, here there is a little girl whose name is Dacia. Is belonging to you? Yes, they said, yes, it's our daughter. And they said, well, come to fetch her. So they came, my mother told me this. They came and then found me sitting on a table in front of a group of policemen all around me. And I was speaking in perfect dialect of Kyoto and saying, I don't want to go back at home at all. I want to be here and become a policeman with you. I was 6 years old, you understand? And just to tell you how, for me, was important, the sense of justice. And I think that all my life has been signed by this idea of sense of justice. And not only for women. I mean, I worked, for example, for homeless people, for asylum people. I was, for example, in asylum witness with very, very, very interesting experience with a psychiatrist. There were some persons that they were tied to the bed because they were considered violent. And they were there always tied. They were there months and years tied. So they had no more teeth because to give them to eat, they had to cut the mouth to open because they didn't want to eat teeth. They were screaming all the day. They were considered persone irrecuperabili, people that they can't recuperate because they were considered impossible. So they were always there, This psychiatrist, which was a friend of mine, and I was a witness, and I wrote about, went there, and in 8 months, he took away all the tide and make them, they were changed completely because they were angry because they were tied, because they were closed, they were forbidden, they were oppressed, So when slowly, he was very kind, very gentle, tried to speak with them. And I assist to this changing, which was incredible. These people considered it absolutely out of the world and indomabili, non so come si dice. They changed completely. In the end, there was a feast. There were all the people. They were dancing, speaking. You see, you understand how can be the power of when the people have the power on other people and they decide that they are unable, which they are not. In that case, they were not. To say that it's not only, I didn't only care about women, but also about person who had no voice, as you said. So it's something that comes from a little bit about the character and then also experience. Thank you, Mina. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hold on.
Nel fronte alla misoginia tanta intensa della società, come sostiene lei la speranza e lo spirito della resistenza? In the face of such intense societal misogyny, how do you sustain the hope and the spirit of resistance?
Thank you. Your name?
Oh, Hannah. Hannah.
Anna. Thank you, Anna. Well, yes, this is a society, a misogynist society. Specifically, as I said, to the religious with a god which is a father with a beard. Usually, it's that, and but the people have the idea, have the sense of justice, as I said before. Even men. I mean, it's not something that regards women, but sometimes some men, the more fragile, the more terrorized by female freedom, because there are the roles and freedom. Come si dice? Cancel roles. I mean, you have to discuss about roles, and that for certain men, it's something that they can't bear. If you know what we call femminicidio, no? Femminicidio is the killing of women from their own partners, and why? I mean, it happens because it's always the same. They have been in love. Sometimes they had made children together. In a certain moment, she says, "I want to go away because you are too jealous, or because I want to be free. I want to work. I want to." And he becomes mad. I mean, because he can't accept identify his own virility with power, with possession, and he feels that his idea of power is made in crisis, and he prefers to kill the person instead of accepting another situation of equality. This is feminicide. All Europe, we have nearly one woman every 2 days. I don't know the situation in America, but I don't think it's different. It's always the same. Well, it's not a war between men and women. It's a war within two cultures: the culture of power, the culture of domination, the culture of possession, and the culture of freedom. It doesn't regard women; it regards everybody. There are some women who believe in this culture, the traditional culture of propriety of the other person. I love you, then you are mine. No? But you can't possess a person. A person can't be propriety. It's not a dog. It's not even a dog can't be propriety. But a person, never. Well, slavery was the propriety of persons. But we decided slavery was not good, even if there is still now some slavery, but is considered out of the law. It's not. It is about abuse. No. Well, for example, prostitution. When we were fighting for the freedom of prostitution in the 70s, we considered women adult and that they decided to sell themselves. No, but now the majority of the prostitutes are foreign people coming, immigrants coming from abroad. They are very often minors, and they are slaves, absolutely slaves. They take away the passport. They rape them several times, so they are completely out of their own rights. And this is kind of new slavery. But there are a lot of people who are fighting against this kind of slavery. And it's difficult because some people don't think. They're not nasty, but they think that doesn't regard them. Instead, everything regards us. Everything, no? And that's why I think that we have to be more fighting against this sort of abuse. Men and women together. It's not a question of being enemies, but to fight against a culture of possession, of slavery, of abuse. This is the thing. The enemy is not a man or a woman, but it's a culture. But it's difficult because sometimes we identify a person with an ideology. Prego. Thank you, Anna.
Grazie. Grazie ancora per tutto questo. Lei ha scritto di tanti problemi sociali e chiaramente questo è qualcosa di molto importante delle tue opere, ma sono curiosa di in un mondo così dominato dal pessimismo e da un promesso di disastro sempre on the horizon, che secondo lei che cos'è il ruolo dell'autore nella società? Pensa che c'è una responsabilità fondamentale al parte dell'autore di scrivere dei problemi sociali. And to translate, you've written about a lot of social problems in your work, and that's clearly something that's very important to you to write about. In a world that is dominated with such pessimism, where it feels like disaster is constantly on the horizon, what do you think the role of an author is in society? And do you think that there is a fundamental responsibility on the part of an author to write about social problems?
Thank you very much. What's your name?
Renata.
Renata. Grazie, Renata. Well, I don't think that the writer should change the world. I mean, doesn't have the power. The world is more difficult. But the author can make consciousness, can create consciousness. Sometimes I make a metaphor. I imagine that the author is like a deep diver, un palombaro. Yeah, he goes underneath the water of the unconsciousness, inconscio collettivo, collective unconsciousness. No? He looks around, he finds things that have been hidden, he brings out from the sea, and he shows to the other people. So for me, the author is somebody who takes out from the unknown things that they are there. He doesn't invent reality, but he makes reality visible. This could be because he has the words to show and to explain reality, but it's not changing reality. I mean, yes, the reality must be changed by the collectiveness. Everybody must participate to the changing of reality. But the author has this power of making words about things that have been not seen. There is invisible things. For me, this is the duty of an author. You agree with me? You agree, Renata? Okay.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Grazie, Renata. There was another hand. Prego.
Ciao, grazie mille. I'll also translate after this. Grazie mille per venga qui. Ho detto alla mia nonna e alla mia mamma ospitante a Milano che venga qui, e le due molto molto entusiastica per me. Anche voglio dire grazie per il suo lavoro del femminicidio e anche della violenza delle donne, specifica perché sono una sopravvissuta dell'aggressione sessuale. Allora grazie mille per tutti i suoi lavori. c'erano le cose specifiche hai visto a Kyoto oppure ai campi che era una ispirazione per i suoi lavori, nel specifica per i lavori delle donne? Oh, and what I said was, thank you so much for coming here. I told my grandmother and my host mom in Milan about it, and they're both very excited for me. Also, thank you for your all your work involving femicide and gender violence towards women, specifically because I'm a sexual assault survivor. And my question was, were there things specifically that you saw in Japan or in the concentration camps that inspired your work for women?
Yes, thank you. Say I miei saluti to your mother and your grandmother. Well, yes, I think that we should be more. We have to be more aware of what happens. The history is very important, and memory is very important. In this culture of market, because we are living in a culture of the market, which is we are all sellers and buyers, and it's very important to cultivate memory, because memory is your own freedom. Memory is freedom. Bergson says that memory is our consciousness, which I think is la coscienza. And because, memory is cancelled all the time. In a society of consume, everything is consumed very quickly. So there is no memory. We are living in a society, in a culture that cancels memory all the time. We don't know what is the past. We know only if we study, but we should know also because we participate emotively to the past. Because the past is we are coming from the past. We are children of the past. We have to know, specifically the women, if we want to change the society, we have to have a good relation with the past. And so I think that memory is a way of resistance against the culture of the market and the consuming culture. You agree with me? What's your name? Mamalea. Bellissimo nome. So you agree with me? Yes. Oh, okay, that's good. That's nice. Okay. C'era qualcun altro? I saw there was a friend before, a hand before. Eccolo là, c'è una mano. Si può passare. Wonderful.
Grazie. Hai parlato molte volte del tentativo di sederti e scrivere di queste esperienze nella sua vita. Immagino che debba essere difficile riflettere su queste esperienze, ma ora dove hai finalmente trovato il potere di scrivere su queste cose in Giappone? My question was, you mentioned that it was really difficult to, and you try many times to sit down and write about these experiences, and I imagine it must be really hard to reflect on them. But where have you found the power to finally sit down and reflect on all these really hard experiences and these life experiences that you have had?
Thank you very much. Well, I tried many times. I started to write about the concentration camp, and then I stopped because it was too painful. Mm-hmm. And so this book has been written in many years, started and stopped. But in these years, just now, I feel that there is a danger of war, because we all know that we have this crisis in which there are several wars. Immediately, improvisamente, they come out from different countries in which there was peace, and there is now a war. And so I thought I have to finish this book because it is a testimony. It is something that I have to show what a little girl can be in a war. So I thought it was a duty. So I could finish the book, but it was painful, but in a way it was also good because, when you write about something, you liberate something from your own memory. And it has been a good thing, but even painful, but I think a good experience. Thank you very much.
Bellissimo, grazie.
So if there are no more questions before saying a final big thanks to Dacia, I would like just to make two announcements. So Dacia is having a tour here in Philadelphia. So she was yesterday at Temple University in a beautiful conversation with our colleague Cristina Gragnani. She will be at UPenn Friday at 5:15, and tomorrow she will be at Bryn Mawr College again. She will be in conversation with our students in Italian about Vita Mia. So they will be sharing their ideas and thoughts on your book, and they will be interviewing Dacia in Italian at 3 in Quita Woodward Room. So for those of you who are happy to join us in Italian, is free, open to everyone to explore more the Dacia Maraini's memoir on the concentration camp. So tomorrow, 3 p.m. at Quita Woodward Room. And speak about the Quita Woodward Room, there is now a reception, food for everyone. So if you want to join us up in Quita Woodward Room, we will celebrate Dacia with this reception. Copies of Clare of Assisi are in English, are available for purchase, and other copies in Italian, and Dacia is kindly available for book signing. So let's just finish with a big thank to Dacia Maraini for joining us.
Grazie.